The world outside is an endless white expanse, stretching under a heavy, low sky. At 40 degrees C, the air is sharp and biting, each breath instantly crystallizing into tiny clouds that vanish into the frosty silence. Snow blankets the boreal forest of northern Minnesota, muffling every sound except the occasional crack of ice or the faint rustle of brittle branches. The landscape is stark. Trees stripped bare of leaves, their limbs coated with frost, standing like sentinels in a frozen cathedral. The ground, thick with powdery snow, conceals the secret struggles of the animals that brave this harsh realm. In this cold, a mother bobcat prowls with slow, cautious steps. Her tawny fur is thick, but no shield against the hunger gnawing at her bones or the weariness etched deep in her amber eyes. The forest, though beautiful in its icy stillness, offers little mercy. Prey is scarce beneath the snow. The shadows lengthen early, and the nights grow cruelly cold. But the bobcat carries something fiercer than the cold, a fierce, quiet determination to protect her cubs hidden somewhere nearby, safe for now, but vulnerable. Before we continue, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments. If you're already feeling the pull of this story, hit subscribe so you don't miss the incredible journey that unfolds next. Inside a modest cabin on the forest's edge, Marin sits beside a frost-covered window. Her eyes, steady but heavy with unspoken sorrow, scan the frozen landscape beyond. Years of isolation have carved lines into her face, each one a map of survival and loss. Once, this cabin was filled with warmth and laughter, shared with the partner she loved. Now, the silence echoes with memories, heavy as the winter snow outside. Marin's connection to this land is profound, rooted in the long northern winters and the quiet rhythms of the wilderness. But grief has frozen parts of her soul she thought would thaw only in time. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, its warmth a fragile barrier against the encroaching cold. Marin draws her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her fingers trembling slightly, not from the chill, but from the ache of solitude. Despite her hard-earned skills living alone in the wild, she carries a vulnerability few see, the silent yearning to be understood, to be seen when the world feels as distant and unyielding as the frozen forest itself. Outside, the bobcat's breath clouds the icy air, a faint plume against the vast whiteness. Her amber eyes catch the glimmer of the cabin window, soft light spilling like a beacon into the winter dark. For a moment, the fierce mother pauses, ears twitching at the faintest sound. Hunger and exhaustion weigh on her frame, but a spark of hope flares. Could this human, so still and watching, be something different from the cold indifference of the wild? The forest holds its breath in the deep silence between dusk and nightfall, shadows stretching long and thin. This moment, fragile and fleeting, is the beginning of a story about trust and healing, about the quiet battles fought far from the eyes of the world. It is a story of survival, yes, but also of connection, an invisible thread woven between two beings shaped by loss and endurance. What follows is not a tale of loud heroics or dramatic rescues. Instead, it is a slow, tender unfolding of mutual understanding. A story that asks us to consider how healing often comes not from action, but from presence. How sometimes the most powerful connections are those forged in silence and stillness. The world outside Marin's cabin stretches wide and white, a vast wilderness hushed beneath a thick blanket of snow. It is midwinter in northern Minnesota, where days are short and cold, bites deep into flesh and bone. The sun hangs low on the horizon, casting pale, golden light that dances softly through frost-laced branches. A stillness settles over the boreal forest, so profound that every sound, no matter how faint, seems amplified in the icy air. The snow underfoot crunches softly as small creatures scurry beneath the frozen canopy, their tracks delicate etchings in the white landscape. A woodpecker taps a rhythmic message on a distant pine, a solitary drumbeat that punctuates the silence. The scent of pine needles and damp earth, muted beneath the snow, lingers faintly on the breeze. Each breath taken here tastes of cold clarity, clean, sharp, and invigorating, yet unforgiving. Hidden within this vast frozen cathedral moves Luna, the bobcat mother. Her tawny coat blends almost seamlessly with the muted browns and grays of the winter forest floor, the subtle pattern of her fur breaking the snow's uniformity like shadows weaving through light. She moves with quiet purpose, paws soft and deliberate, stepping lightly to conserve energy in the harsh cold. Though solitary by nature, Luna carries the invisible weight of motherhood. Somewhere nearby, nestled in a shallow den beneath the roots of an ancient spruce, lie her cubs, fragile, vulnerable, and dependent. The snow conceals their presence, but Luna's every movement is shaped by their need. Her sharp amber eyes scan the frozen expanse with a predator's alertness, tempered by the fierce protection of a mother's heart. This is a world that demands patience and quiet endurance. The bobcat's hunting patterns have adapted to the cruel season, stalking small rodents beneath snowdrifts, listening for the faintest rustle of life beneath ice and bark. At times, hunger gnaws at her with merciless persistence, but she moves with a dignity born of millennia of survival. Each step, each calculated pause, speaks of an instinct both ancient and deeply personal. The wind stirs suddenly, rattling dry branches overhead and sending a flurry of snow swirling and lazy spirals. Luna presses low, muscles tensed, eyes narrowing as a rabbit darts briefly through a clearing. The chase is swift and quiet, a blur of speed and grace, and when the bobcat finally stills, breath steaming in the cold, the forest resumes its tranquil hush. Not far from where Luna prowls, Marin steps outside her cabin, the sharp air biting at her cheeks. She pulls her woolen scarf tighter around her neck and pauses to take in the scene, a frozen landscape of stillness and muted beauty. The cabin's wooden walls creak softly as they settle into the deep cold, and the faint smoke from the chimney curls upward, mingling with the crisp air. Marin knows this land intimately. The subtle shifts of wind, the tracks left in the snow, the rhythm of life persisting beneath winter's grip. She listens to the quiet symphony of the woods, the crackling of ice, the distant call of a raven, the whisper of a fox padding unseen. It is a world that demands respect and patience, where survival is measured in moments of silence and subtle movement. The snow under her boots compresses with a satisfying crunch as she walks toward the edge of the forest. The trees stand tall and still, their branches heavy with frost, the weight of countless winters pressing down. The scent of cold pine and earth rises faintly, mingling with the smoky warmth of the cabin behind her. As twilight deepens, the soft glow of lantern light spills from the cabin window, casting long shadows across the snow. Inside, warmth and quiet coexist, an oasis of life amid the frozen stillness. Outside, Luna pauses at the forest's edge, her keen eyes catching that gentle illumination. For a moment, the wild and the human worlds seem to touch, two solitary figures, both shaped by isolation and endurance, each watching the other across the fragile divide. This peaceful before moment holds a fragile promise, a breath held, between what is and what might be. The slow rhythm of winter carries the weight of survival, but also the possibility of connection, of trust slowly woven in silence. Here, beneath the frozen sky, the story begins, not with noise or fury, but with the quiet meeting of two lives poised on the edge of change. In the quiet vastness of the snow-blanketed forest, Luna moves with a grace honed by nature's relentless demand. She is not merely an animal fighting for survival. She is a mother shaped by instincts as old as the land itself. Her amber eyes hold the steady fire of resilience, tempered by an unspoken wisdom born of hardship. Every sinew in her lean frame speaks of endurance, of nights spent prowling under frozen stars, of days spent sheltering tiny lives beneath tangled roots. Luna's fur is thick, mottled with tawny gold and streaks of shadow that blend seamlessly into the woodland's muted palette. Her paws, wide and padded, tread softly over the powdery snow, each step careful to conserve precious energy in the biting cold. Her whiskers twitch, sensing the faintest vibrations, a whisper of movement beneath the ice, the soft rustle of a mouse beneath a fallen branch. She pauses often, ears rotating independently to catch sounds that escape the human ear, her senses alive in a world shaped by silence. Her cubs are hidden safely in a den she crafted beneath the roots of a gnarled spruce. There, sheltered from the relentless wind and snow, the newborns lie curled together, fragile and vulnerable. Though their eyes are not yet open, Luna's thoughts circle around them constantly, a steady current beneath the stillness of her movements. She carries the weight of their future in her bones, the knowledge that her strength must stretch beyond her own needs to keep them alive. Luna's survival is not just a matter of instinct, but of calculated patience. When hunting, she stalks with a careful, measured rhythm, lowering her body close to the snow, muscles coiled like springs. Her amber gaze locks onto movement, tracking the subtle shifts in the white landscape. Then, with sudden, fluid precision, she pounces. This dance between predator and prey is one she has perfected, a vital ritual in the harsh winter wilderness. Despite her strength, signs of the season's toll are etched into her slender frame. Starvation tugs at her ribs. Her once bold stride is slower, measured with exhaustion. Yet, beneath it all, her dignity remains unbroken. She moves with the quiet pride of one who refuses to surrender, even as the cold presses in from all sides. The bobcat's behaviors reveal a complex balance between wild instincts and the deep tenderness of motherhood. She is fiercely protective, hissing softly when a curious crow drifts too near her den, ears flattened in warning. Yet in moments of stillness, she shows a rare softness, nuzzling her cubs with gentle care, licking their downy fur to warm them in the frozen air. It is a delicate choreography of survival and love. Luna's world is shaped by seasons and cycles far beyond human reckoning. She navigates the subtle changes in temperature and light, the shifting availability of prey, and the ever-present threat of predators and humans alike. Her territorial markings, scratches on bark, scent left in the underbrush, are silent messages to others, declarations of presence in a vast, indifferent expanse. This delicate interplay of instinct and vulnerability invites a deeper reflection on the nature of endurance. Luna is not merely surviving, she is embodying a quiet wisdom, a resilience that embraces hardship without complaint. Her strength is measured not in force, but in the steady perseverance that carries her through long nights and bleak days. As dusk falls, the forest softens into shadow. Luna curls beneath a thicket, eyes half closed, listening to the muffled heartbeat of the wilderness around her. The cold wind whispers through the branches, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant earth. In this moment, she is both a solitary creature and a living thread woven into the fabric of the land. The quiet dignity of Luna's existence mirrors something profoundly human, the capacity to endure pain and isolation without losing the core of one's being. Her story asks us to consider how strength often resides in silence and stillness, how love can be fierce even when it makes no sound. This intimate glimpse into Luna's life deepens our connection to her, not as a distant wild animal, but as a living spirit shaped by loss, hope, and unwavering resolve. It prepares us to witness the unfolding journey of trust and healing that lies ahead. Beneath the thick cloak of snow and ice, Luna's world grows ever more precarious. Hunger gnaws at her lean frame with a relentless persistence, a shadow stretching longer with each passing day. It is a silent burden, one she carries alone, masked beneath the calm dignity of her movements. The forest offers little reprieve. The usual prey is scarce, buried beneath the frozen earth or hidden in burrows sealed tight against the winter's grasp. In the deep cold, even the smallest meal becomes a battle fought in shadows. Luna's amber eyes, once bright and sharp, now flicker with weariness. Her muscles tense, not with strength but with the effort of conserving what little energy remains. She moves slowly, deliberately, a ghost gliding over white expanses, her breath steaming faintly in the biting air. Starvation in the wild is a quiet erosion, a slow fading of vitality rather than a sudden collapse. Luna knows this truth intimately. Her hunting attempts grow fewer and more desperate, stalking through dense underbrush, ears pricked for the faintest rustle, paws probing the snow for hidden signs of life. Yet success is fleeting. A missed leap, a startled rabbit slipping through her grasp. Each failure deepens the gnawing ache within, a shadow that follows her like a second skin. Within her body, the signs of strain are subtle but real, fat res. Hervés, once ample to carry her through lean times, have thinned dangerously. Her movements betray stiffness and fatigue, stretching limbs with less ease, curling into tighter, smaller nests to conserve warmth. Even the thick winter coat that shields her from the frost cannot mask the toll of hunger. Yet beneath this quiet suffering lies a reservoir of resilience. Luna's maternal instinct drives her forward, a force stronger than any physical weakness. Her cubs, nestled in the sheltered den beneath tangled roots, depend wholly on her survival. The thought of their fragility steels her resolve, a silent promise to endure, to protect at any cost. The forest itself holds no pity. Winter is impartial, a cycle of life and death as ancient as the trees themselves. Luna's world is a tapestry woven from instinct and necessity, where every choice carries weight and consequence. Her pauses in the hunt are measured, moments of calculation rather than defeat. She listens deeply, ears attuned to the faintest signs of prey or danger, every breath drawn with care in the frigid air. Scientific observations reveal how bobcats adapt to such hardship. Their metabolism slows to conserve energy. Hunting strategies shift to focus on smaller, more accessible prey. The risk of exposure increases with every excursion beyond the den, yet the imperative to feed offspring pushes them outward. Luna's struggle is not unique, but it is no less profound. It is a testament to the quiet endurance required to navigate the brutal seasons of survival. Despite the gnawing hunger, Luna's dignity remains intact. She does not wail or call out for aid. Her suffering is contained within, a private, dignified endurance. There is no dramatics here, only the steady, unyielding will to continue. This is the silent language of survival, a narrative written not in cries but in persistence. Yet a thread of hope weaves through even the darkest days. Luna's cautious movements lead her closer to the boundary where wild meets human, a place both foreign and filled with unexpected possibility. The faint glow of the cabin window catches her eye, a warm beacon in the frozen dusk. For a moment she hesitates, a fragile flicker of curiosity and need breaking through instinctive wariness. This moment marks the subtle turning point, the slow opening of a door that has remained closed to all but the wildest instincts. It is not a loud surrender, but a quiet gesture of trust, fragile as frost on a window pane. Luna's eyes, still fierce and proud, hold a silent question. Could there be a place for her beyond the cold wilderness? As night deepens, the forest seems to hold its breath. The snow falls softly, muffling footsteps and whispering secrets known only to the stars. Luna retreats to her den, weary but unbroken, her mind heavy with the weight of tomorrow's unknown. This quiet crisis reveals not just a battle against hunger, but a profound resilience, the dignity of a mother willing to endure all for the fragile lives she carries. It invites us to witness suffering without spectacle, to honor strength in silence, and to recognize the unspoken courage that sustains even the most isolated souls. Marin sat by the cabin window, the warmth from the crackling fire behind her, a thin shield against the unforgiving cold that seeped through the wooden walls. Outside, the world was swallowed in white, endless snowdrifts stretching toward a horizon that blurred beneath a heavy gray sky. She traced the frosted patterns on the glass with a calloused finger, her breath fogging the pain, a brief, visible connection between her quiet interior and the frozen wilderness beyond. The years since her husband's passing had folded around her like the thick winter layers she now wore, a blend of solitude, memory, and the slow ache of loss. Life in this remote corner of northern Minnesota was not new to her. She had learned to read the forest's subtle signs, to respect its rhythms and moods. But grief was a different terrain, unpredictable and raw, its presence as chilling as the sub-zero air that howled beyond her door. Marin's grief was quiet, held deep beneath the surface, a silent current threading through her days. She rarely spoke of it, even to those who visited, her estranged daughter among them, who saw only the outward calm of a woman shaped by the land. Yet beneath that calm lay vulnerability, a loneliness so profound it sometimes seemed to echo the vast, empty spaces outside. Her connection to this land was woven through years of solitude and care, a dance of survival and resilience, not unlike the one unfolding just beyond her walls. The cabin was her sanctuary and her prison, a place where the boundary between human and wilderness blurred. She lived by the slow, steady pulse of the seasons, her senses finely tuned to the subtle shifts in weather, wildlife, and light. On the mornings when the sun crept hesitantly above the tree line, casting long, pale shadows across the snow, Marin would step outside wrapped in wool and leather. The cold air filled her lungs with its sharp clarity, and for a moment the weight of her sorrow seemed to lighten beneath the endless sky. She had learned to listen, to the whisper of the wind, the crunch of footsteps hidden beneath the snow, the distant call of a raven, and in that listening, she found a fragile peace. Yet there was something new stirring in the stillness of this winter. Tracks near the cabin, too small and cautious to belong to any creature she had known, began to appear in the snow. Faint paw prints, delicate and purposeful, traced a silent path through the woods and paused near the edge of her porch. She iced the subtle disturbance of leaves beneath the snow, the faint scent of wild fir mingling with the pine and cold earth. Marin's trained eyes recognized the signs of a bobcat, an elusive and solitary creature, rarely seen but keenly felt in the heartbeat of the forest. The knowledge stirred something deep within her, a mixture of curiosity, empathy, and an inexplicable tenderness. The silent struggle of this wild mother, hidden beneath layers of fur and snow, echoed her own quiet endurance. Her background had prepared her for survival in this wilderness, but it had not prepared her for the emotional threads now weaving between her and this shadowy visitor. She carried the memory of a life shared and lost, and now a fragile new connection began to take shape, one that would challenge her isolation and draw her into a story neither could have anticipated. Marin was not a hero in any conventional sense. She was a woman shaped by grief and solitude, with no grand ambitions or dramatic gestures. Yet her empathy, honed by years of listening to the silent language of the land, made her uniquely suited to this moment. Her respect for life, human and wild alike, anchored her choices even as the emotional weight threatened to overwhelm. A secondary figure lingered in the background of her life. A local wildlife expert named Elias, a steady presence who often cautioned against interfering with nature's harsh balance. His pragmatic voice was a reminder of the ethical complexities she would soon face, the tension between the desire to help and the necessity of respecting the wild. Their conversations were measured, sometimes strained, reflecting the difficult questions that hovered like winter clouds. When does intervention honor life? When does it disrupt it? Marin's days followed the slow rhythm of winter, each one a measured step through sorrow and hope. She tended her small garden buried beneath snow, repaired worn tools, and prepared the cabin for the coming thaw. Yet always her thoughts returned to the signs left by Luna, the bobcat, who had stepped quietly into her world. It was a presence both wild and intimate, a secret shared beneath the frozen sky. In this moment, the boundary between human and wilderness seemed less distinct. The loneliness that had once defined her existence began to soften, replaced by a tentative awareness that healing might come in unexpected forms. Marin's story was no longer hers alone. It was intertwined now with a silent, dignified creature whose struggle mirrored her own. The forest held its breath as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows and bathing the world in a pale golden glow. Inside the cabin, Marin's eyes reflected both the firelight and the quiet determination taking root within her. The next chapter of this winter's tale was about to unfold, one shaped by trust, endurance, and the fragile hope that even in the coldest silence, connection is possible. The forest lay cloaked in a brittle silence, deepening as twilight slipped across the snow-blanketed land. Luna moved cautiously, her steps nearly soundless against the soft drift of freshly fallen snow. The air was sharp with cold, each breath a fragile plume that vanished almost as soon as it formed. She skirted the shadows cast by the tall spruce trees, every muscle coiled with alertness, senses stretched taut like the strings of a bow. Ahead, a pale glow spilled from the cabin's window, a warm rectangle of light nestled in the darkness. Luna's amber eyes reflected the flickering flame within, a subtle contrast to the icy world around her. For a wild creature bred on solitude and caution, this light was an anomaly, a beacon both intriguing and unsettling. Her instinct urged her to retreat, to melt back into the forest's embrace, but something, an unspoken need, a flicker of desperation, held her gaze. From inside the cabin, Marin stood near the window, her breath fogging the glass. Her eyes searched the darkness beyond the warm glow, catching glimpses of movement, shadows shifting in the periphery. She sensed, rather than saw, the presence watching her, a quiet pulse of life threading through the stillness. Her heart quickened with a mix of hope and hesitation. Neither fully wild nor wholly tame, the space between Luna and Marin was charged with delicate tension, a threshold where two worlds, so different in their ways, hovered on the edge of understanding. Luna's body language spoke volumes, a low crouch, ears swiveling toward unseen sounds, tail flicking in subtle agitation. Marin's posture was still, hands resting lightly on the window frame, eyes soft, yet attentive. The bobcat's cautious approach was a study in balance, between fear and curiosity, instinct and emerging trust. She crept closer to the cabin's edge, nostrils flaring to catch unfamiliar scents, muscles tensed to flee if danger drew near. The cold air carried the faint scent of wood smoke and something warmer, human presence woven into the fabric of the wilderness. In these moments, communication flowed not through words but through silence and gesture. Luna's eyes locked onto Marin's, an unspoken question lingering in the frost-thickened air. "Can I trust you?" Marin's gaze softened, offering no sudden movements, only quiet presence. Her breath steadied, the crackle of the fire a distant comfort. Outside, the snow whispered beneath faint paw prints, delicate marks tracing Luna's path to the cabin. The wind shifted, carrying the crisp scent of pine and earth mingled with the warmth of hearth and home. Time seemed to slow, suspended in the fragile space where predator met human without threat, where vulnerability flickered like the candlelight within. Nearby, the tracks of Luna's cubs remained hidden beneath. Deeper snowdrifts, a silent reminder of the stakes beneath this encounter. Luna's maternal instincts sharpened her senses. Her survival was bound not only to her own endurance, but to the fragile lives waiting in the hidden den. The choice to approach the cabin was weighted with risk and hope, a quiet gamble in the shadowed winter. Marin's internal world was a mirror to Luna's own cautious hope. Years of solitude had attuned her to the forest's rhythms. She sensed the significance of this encounter as a thread woven through her grief and longing. She resisted the urge to reach out, to break the delicate trust forming in the silence. Instead, she remained still, a witness and a quiet participant in a dialogue without words. The temperature dipped further as night deepened, stars emerging cold and distant above the dark canopy. Luna lingered a moment longer, her body low, eyes bright and searching. Then, as softly as she had come, she slipped back into the sheltering woods, paws treading carefully over the snow's fragile crust. The forest exhaled, reclaiming its quiet mystery. Marin's heart beat steadily, a mix of wonder and cautious hope rising within her. The encounter had been brief, intangible, a flicker of connection in a world defined by isolation and survival. Yet it was enough to kindle something new, a fragile promise that healing might come not in grand gestures, but in moments like this, quiet, unspoken, and real. The delicate tension of first contact hung between them, a thread of trust just beginning to take shape. Neither could know what lay ahead, only that the boundaries between human and wild had shifted, opening a door to something deeper. The night held its breath as Marin turned from the window, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around her like a shield. Outside, Luna disappeared into the dark forest, carrying with her the fragile hope of a mother willow. To take a chance on life, on trust, and on a world that might yet hold more than silence. The world was steeped in the deepening blue of twilight. The snow-blanketed forest softened beneath a veil of dusk. The cold air shimmered with crystalline clarity, and the faint glow from Marin's cabin cast long, gentle shadows across the powdery white ground. Inside, the steady warmth of the fire hummed quietly, a refuge against the growing chill. Outside, Luna moved with a cautious grace, stepping lightly toward the cabin's edge. Her amber eyes glimmered in the fading light, scanning the familiar outline of the wooden structure. The scent of smoke, mingled with the sharp crispness of pine and frozen earth, enveloped her senses. Tonight, something within her urged a tentative approach, a fragile hope threading through the fabric of her hunger and fatigue. Marin stood by the window, her breath slow and steady, eyes fixed on the bobcat's deliberate movements. The silence between them stretched and pulsed, a shared space where the unspoken could speak loudest. No words passed, no sudden motions disturbed the fragile balance. Instead, understanding deepened in the quiet stillness. Luna's body language shifted subtly. Her muscles relaxed, tail lowering slightly as she settled near the cabin's base. She accepted the scent of Marin's presence without fear, her amber gaze steady yet searching. The wary flicker of hesitation softened into something more akin to trust, a wordless acknowledgement that this human too carried a quiet weight, a loneliness mirrored in her own struggle. Marin's heart thudded with gentle urgency, an ache unspoken but deeply felt. She knew this moment was delicate, a bridge spanning two worlds separated by instinct and silence. Her hands rested lightly on the window frame, still and open, a silent invitation rather than a demand. The bobcat's eyes met hers, and in that gaze was a profound recognition of shared endurance, of mutual need, of an unvoiced promise to honor each other's existence. It was a connection forged not in loud declarations, but in the quiet act of presence. Luna's slow blink mirrored Marin's own, a subtle gesture of peace and acceptance. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the scent of pine resin and the faint trace of earth beneath snow. The distant call of an owl punctuated the stillness, a solitary song threading through the night. This was a moment suspended in time, a fragile pause where two lives converged in understanding. Luna moved closer to a small dish Marin had placed near the cabin's edge, hesitating only briefly before approaching. Her body remained low, every muscle attuned to potential threat, yet her hunger overcame caution. She nibbled delicately at the food, eyes never leaving Marin's figure inside. It was an act of tentative trust, fragile as the frost on the window pane. Marin's breath caught, warmth pooling in her chest. The simple act carried a weight beyond the meal itself. It was an opening, a softening of boundaries, long held in place by fear and isolation. She understood that Luna's choice to accept help was a leap of faith, a quiet surrender to the possibility of care beyond the wilderness. For a moment, the harshness of winter faded, replaced by a tenderness woven through the cold air. The cabin and forest seemed less separate, bound together by the fragile thread of connection now stretching between them. Nearby, the tracks of Luna's cubs remained hidden beneath the snow, a silent reminder of the lives tethered to this fragile trust. The mother's decision to return was not just for herself, but for them, a promise whispered in the language of survival and love. Marin's thoughts drifted to her own solitude, the grief that had wrapped her heart in cold silence. In Luna's eyes she saw a reflection of her own endurance, a shared narrative of loss and hope entwined beneath the vast winter sky. The quiet recognition between woman and wildcat was not a moment of triumph, but of mutual respect and fragile hope. It was a beginning, not of rescue, but of understanding. If you've ever experienced a moment of perfect understanding with an animal, subscribe now to join others who believe connection transcends words. Tell me in the comments, what's the most profound moment you've shared with an animal? As the stars began to prickle the night sky, Marin stepped back from the window, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around her like a protective cloak. Luna lingered briefly, eyes bright and steady, before slipping back into the sheltering woods. The night held its breath, a silent witness to the fragile bond now forming beneath the frozen sky. This was the quiet bridge between two worlds, a space where trust began to weave its delicate tapestry, promising that even in silence, healing is possible. The firelight flickered softly against the cabin walls, casting long shadows that danced with the rhythm of Marin's restless thoughts. Outside, the winter night pressed against the window pane, its icy fingers reaching inward, chilling the corners of the small room where she sat wrapped in layers of wool. The stillness of the forest beyond seemed to echo the quiet storm stirring within her, a tempest of fear, hope, and the heavy weight of responsibility. Marin's mind traced the delicate moments with Luna, the bobcat mother whose amber eyes had met hers in silent recognition, whose tentative steps toward the cabin had whispered of trust and need. It was an invitation unlike any she had ever received, a fragile thread stretching across the boundary between wild and human. Yet with it came questions that twisted deep into her heart. Could she cross that line? Should she? The ethical shadows loomed large. In the wilderness, nature's harsh laws governed life and death, survival and surrender. Intervening meant breaking that fragile balance, tipping the scales in a way that could alter the course of Luna's existence and the natural order itself. Her thoughts turned to Elias, the local wildlife expert whose steady pragmatism often tempered her impulses. He had cautioned her gently but firmly, reminding her of the importance of letting nature take its course. "We can't save every life without risking the whole," he had said, voice low and grave. "Sometimes the greatest kindness is allowing the wild to be wild." But Marin felt a different call, a pull from the depths of her own solitude, a reflection of her grief mirrored in Luna's silent struggle. The bobcat was not just an animal battling the winter. She was a mother fighting for her cubs, a kindred spirit waging a quiet war of endurance. Marin's own heart, bruised and fragile, recognized a chance for healing beyond herself. She breathed deeply, the cold air sharp in her lungs, and steeled herself for the decision she knew was coming. To help meant risking failure, heartbreak, and the unknown. It meant facing her fears of intrusion, of being rejected, of changing something that might not be meant to change. Gathering what supplies she could, the warm blankets, nourishing food, and medicines she had tucked away for emergencies, Maren prepared for the delicate task ahead. Each item was packed with care, a tangible expression of hope stitched with uncertainty. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the gravity of crossing this threshold. She had lived long enough in these woods to know the thin line between protector and interloper. Yet tonight, that line felt porous, as if Luna's silent trust had softened the boundary enough to allow passage. As she dressed in layers, the weight of solitude pressed in, yet beneath it flickered a stubborn ember of courage. This was more than rescue. It was a leap of faith, a fragile promise whispered beneath the star-studded sky. The cabin door creaked softly as Maren stepped into the biting night, the snow crunching beneath her boots in a rhythm steady and slow. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and frozen earth, a reminder of the world she was about to step fully into. Her breath formed a steady mist, mingling with the faint glow of lantern light as she approached the edge of the forest where Luna's tracks had first appeared. The silence was deep and watchful, as if the woods themselves held their breath in anticipation. In her mind, Maren wrestled with the moral complexities that shadowed her every move. Was this act an intrusion or a gift, a saving grace or an unwelcome interference? She knew Elias's words well, but her heart pushed forward regardless. This rescue was not just about Luna, it was about reclaiming a part of herself long buried beneath grief. Helping this silent mother was a step toward healing her own fractured spirit, a way to bridge the gap between isolation and connection. She paused at the tree line, the forest dark and still before her, and whispered a quiet plea, not just for Luna's safety but for courage to walk this uncertain path. The night embraced her as she crossed into the wild, a place both foreign and intimately known. The ethical dilemma remained unresolved, a weight to carry through the coming days. Yet in that moment, Maren chose presence over fear, hope over hesitation. She was stepping into a story that neither she nor Luna could fully predict, a journey marked by tenderness, challenge, and the fragile dance of trust. The cold night pressed in around her, but within Maren burned a quiet fire. The fierce determination of a woman willing to face the unknown for the chance to nurture life and, in doing so, heal the wounds that solitude had etched deep. The early morning sky was a pale wash of gray, the sun a timid glow behind heavy clouds that mist more snow. The air held the crisp, biting chill of winter's heart, and a soft hush settled over the snow-draped forest. Maren moved carefully through the woods, her breath a steady mist, footsteps muffled by thick layers of powder. The weight of the small bundle in her arms was light but precious, a fragile cub wrapped in soft blankets, its tiny body trembling with cold and weakness. Her heart thudded with a mixture of hope and fear. This was no simple act, it was the first step across a delicate threshold, a fragile dance with trust and survival. The cub's eyes fluttered closed, ears twitching faintly at the sounds of the forest waking around them. Maren's fingers traced gentle patterns along its fur, careful to offer comfort without overwhelm. Nearby, Luna lingered at the edge of the trees, eyes sharp but wary. Her body was tense, every muscle coiled with protective instinct, yet she watched without advancing. The mother's amber gaze flickered with a complex blend of curiosity, caution, and the fierce love that bound her to this vulnerable life. The choice to allow this intervention was a silent plea, a fragile hope woven through instinct. Maren settled near the cabin, transforming a quiet corner into a refuge. Layers of warm blankets cushioned the makeshift nest, and bowls of fresh water and nourishing food waited nearby. The scent of pine and wood smoke mingled with the faint warmth of the fire, creating a sanctuary where healing could begin. Yet the space was more than physical. It was a gentle invitation into trust, a slow unraveling of fear. The challenges of this first intervention quickly became clear. The cub, fragile and disoriented, struggled to adapt to the unfamiliar warmth and human presence. It whimpered softly, the sound barely more than a breath, and curled instinctively toward the shelter of Marin's hands. The bobcat's natural wariness was about Ryer, a reminder that this was a wildlife, shaped by survival and instinct rather than human comfort. Marin's own doubts echoed in the quiet room. Was this care a gift or an intrusion? Could trust truly be earned in this fragile, uncertain moment? Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, gentle but firm, tending to the cub's needs with a tenderness born of hope and necessity. The cub's small heart beat rapidly, a fragile rhythm that seemed to echo her own. Outside, Luna prowled with restless energy, pacing the perimeter, ears flicking at every sound. The forest was alive with quiet movement, the distant call of a raven, the rustle of wind through bare branches, the soft fall of snowflakes drifting like feathers. Luna's gaze never left the cabin, the tension between fear and hope threading through her posture. Scientific understanding of bobcat behavior illuminated the complexity of this moment. Mothers are fiercely protective, their bonds to their young unbreakable, yet cautious of unfamiliar presence. Stress responses in both mother and cub could trigger flight or aggression, making the balance between care and intrusion precarious. Marin's knowledge and patience were her greatest tools, tempered by humility and respect for the wildness she was entering. The growing bond between human and animal was fragile but unmistakable. Luna's eyes, when they met Marin's, held a silent question and a flicker of recognition, a tentative acknowledgement of shared intention. Marin responded with quiet stillness, her presence steady and non-threatening, a beacon in the uncertain night. Time stretched and folded in this intimate space, moments of progress shadowed by setbacks. The cub's appetite waned at times, its small body trembling with weakness. Yet in each faltering step toward recovery, there was a spark of resilience, a promise that life could endure even in the harshest of winters. Marin found herself learning anew each day, how to read subtle signals, how to balance interventi, on with respect, how to hold hope without forcing outcome. The quiet room became a classroom, the cub a patient teacher. Every small victory, a flicker of energy, a soft purr, a trusting glance, was a balm to her own wounded spirit. Outside, the forest waited and watched. The boundary between wild and human worlds softened, but not erased. Luna's presence was a reminder that this journey was shared, a delicate negotiation of trust, survival, and connection. The first intervention was not a triumph, but a beginning, a tender step along a path marked by uncertainty and grace. In the quiet struggle of care, both woman and bobcat took tentative steps toward healing, each drawing strength from the other's presence. Days passed slowly in the fragile sanctuary of the cabin's quiet corner. Outside, the winter's grip remained unyielding, the snow deepening, the air sharp and unrelenting. But inside, a subtle transformation began to unfold. Luna's cub, once fragile and trembling, showed faint sparks of strength. The rise and fall of its tiny chest grew steadier, breaths less labored beneath the careful watch of Marin. The soft glow of the hearth bathed the room in warm, amber light, wrapping the small space in a gentle embrace. Marin sat near the makeshift den, her eyes tracing the delicate movements of the cub. Each slight twitch of an ear, each flutter of a whisker, became a milestone in a journey of slow, uncertain healing. She whispered quiet encouragements, her voice a low murmur carried on the still air, a tender thread weaving connection between human and wild. The healing was not linear. Setbacks emerged as shadows in the fragile light, moments when the cub's appetite faltered, or a sudden shiver betrayed lingering weakness. Marin's heart tightened with each falter, but she met these moments with steady resolve. She understood that healing was a dance of patience and grace, a process shaped by the rhythms of nature itself. Scientific knowledge guided her care. She monitored hydration carefully, knowing the small body's delicate balance was easily tipped. Nutritional support was crafted with care. Protein-rich meals, mimicking what the wild would offer, supplemented with fluids warmed to mimic the mother's warmth. The bobcat's physiology demanded gentle handling, her thin frame vulnerable to stress, but resilient beneath it all. Marin's own transformation mirrored the cub's progress. The quiet days spent in caregiving drew her from the isolation of grief toward a renewed sense of purpose. Each small sign of recovery ignited hope, a balm to wounds deeper than the cold could reach. In tending to another's fragile life, she found threads of healing weaving through her own. Outside, Luna's presence remained a steady force. The mother bobcat circled the cabin's perimeter, her eyes sharp and watchful. Her instincts held her wary, yet moments of stillness hinted at a growing acceptance of the human presence. She listened to the familiar sounds, the crackle of firewood, Marin's soft footsteps, and found in them a strange comfort, a rhythm to which she could attune. The interplay of wild and human was a delicate balance. Luna's natural behaviors, scratching at trees, scent marking, guarding the den site, persisted, reminders that this was her world as much as any other. Yet her cautious glances toward the cabin spoke of a tentative trust, a recognition that survival might require new alliances. Marin learned to read the subtle cues of bobcat communication, the flick of an ear signaling alertness, the slow blink conveying calm, the gentle grooming motions that spoke of comfort and reassurance. These moments of quiet connection deepened the bond, bridging the divide between species with a language beyond words. The winter light shifted gradually, softening as days lengthened imperceptibly. With it came Renee. What energy for both the cub and its caretaker. The cub's eyes opened fully now, revealing bright, curious orbs that mirrored Luna's amber gaze. Tentative steps were taken within the safety of the cabin, a fragile dance toward independence and strength. Yet the journey was far from over. Healing required vigilance, a readiness to meet challenges with calm resolve. Marin's nights were punctuated by watchful hours, hands poised to soothe, heart open to hope, tempered by realism. The wildness within the cub remained, a fierce spark that demanded respect and careful guidance. In these quiet days, the boundaries between human and wild blurred. Marin found herself not just a caregiver, but a witness to a remarkable process, the resilience of life, the power of trust, and the profound capacity for healing found in silence and stillness. Each dawn brought light that touched snow and soul alike, a reminder that even in the harshest winters, life persists, fragile yet fierce. This shared journey of healing was a testament to the quiet strength that dwells in all beings, a story woven in the soft rhythms of breath, touch, and presence. The first gentle warmth of early spring began to seep into the frozen landscape, softening the edges of snow and ice and stirring the forest from its long, quiet slumber. Pale sunlight filtered through budding branches, casting dappled patterns on the thawing earth beneath. Inside the cabin, the air felt lighter, infused with a subtle promise of renewal and change. Marin sat by the window, watching Luna's mother and her cub as they moved with newfound strength and confidence. The bobcat's coats, once dull and patchy from hardship, now gleamed with vibrant health. Their amber eyes held the steady fire of life reclaimed, a testament to resilience carved out of winter's harshest trials. The transformation was not only physical but deeply emotional for both human and animal. Marin's own heart, once locked in the quiet chambers of grief, began to thaw. The steady rhythm of caregiving, the delicate trust woven through patient presence, had stirred something ancient and healing within her. She felt a subtle but profound shift, as if the shared endurance between her and Luna's family had opened a door to hope. The quiet bond they had forged carried her beyond isolation and sorrow. In Luna's gaze, Maren found reflections of her own strength and vulnerability, the fierce determination to survive, the soft longing for connection. The cub's tentative playfulness stirred a lightness in her spirit long dormant, a reminder that life could be both fragile and joyous. Luna, for her part, embodied the fierce grace of a creature reborn. Her movements were fluid and sure, each step a reclamation of the wild freedom that had once seemed so distant. Yet, in moments of stillness, her eyes would seek the cabin's warm glow, as if acknowledging the human who had become part of their story, not as a captor, but as a guardian of fragile trust. The days unfolded with a delicate balance of anticipation and farewell. Maren prepared a small enclosure near the edge of the woods, a space where the bobcats could reacclimate to the wilderness under her watchful eye. She filled it with natural branches, leaves, and shelter, mimicking the den that had once hidden the cubs from the cold. The transformation extended beyond the physical realm. Maren's conversations with Elias, the wildlife expert, deepened as they discussed the complexities of rewilding and the ethics of intervention. Their dialogues, respectful and honest, underscored the delicate dance between care and respect for nature's rhythms. "Sometimes," Elias said, his voice thoughtful, "the greatest gift we can give is freedom. But freedom requires readiness, and that takes time." Maren nodded, feeling the weight and truth of those words. The decision to release was both an ending and a beginning, a bittersweet acknowledgment of the boundaries that must remain, even in the deepest bonds. On a soft afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, Luna paused at the enclosure's edge. Her eyes met Maren's one final time, steady, clear, and filled with a silent gratitude that spoke louder than words. The cub frolicked nearby, a lively spark of hope and survival. Maren felt a swell of emotion rise within her, a mixture of pride, sadness, and profound connection. She understood that this moment was a culmination of countless small steps, each taken in trust and care. The transformation had changed more than the bobcats. It had reshaped her own soul. If you've ever experienced a moment of transformation born from quiet trust and shared healing, subscribe now to join others who believe that connection transcends all boundaries. Tell me in the comments, how has caring for another changed you? As twilight deepened, Maren opened the gate to the enclosure. Luna and her cubs slipped silently into the waiting forest, shadows merging with trees as they stepped toward their reclaimed freedom. Maren watched, heart full, as the two figures vanished into the wild embrace of the land, a story of endurance and rebirth carried on the breath of the wind. The forest seemed to exhale, welcoming them home, while Maren turned back toward the cabin. The journey that had begun in silence had blossomed into a quiet triumph, a shared story of healing that neither would forget. The first light of dawn spilled softly across the awakening forest, tinting the snow with gentle hues of rose and gold. The air, still crisp and cool, held the quiet promise of spring's slow arrival, an unspoken reminder that even the harshest winters must give way to renewal. Outside the cabin, the world stirred with subtle sounds, a distant bird's call, the soft rustle of branches swaying in the morning breeze, the faint crunch of footsteps upon thawing ground. Luna stood at the forest's edge, her lean frame silhouetted against the waking light. Her amber eyes, deep pools of strength and experience, scanned the horizon with a calm certainty. Beside her, the cub, now sturdy and lively, paused, ears perked and tail flicking with curiosity. For a long moment, Luna turned her gaze back toward the cabin, the warm glow still visible through the trees, and in that shared glance was something profound, a silent farewell, a bond etched in trust and quiet gratitude. Inside, Maren stood by the window, her breath catching as she caught sight of Luna's steady gaze. The years of solitude and sorrow seemed to condense into that single moment of recognition, a bridge between two worlds, fragile yet unbreakable. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sorrow, knowing this release was both an ending and a beginning. The bobcats melted into the forest's embrace, shadows among shadows, and Marin felt the weight of their absence like a gentle ache, a tender echo of the connection that had transformed her own life. The silence that followed was not empty but filled with the soft resonance of healing, the quiet light of trust carried forward into the wild. Her thoughts drifted to the journey they had shared, the fragile trust forged in silence, the slow dance of care and courage, the resilience born in the darkest cold. In Luna's survival, Marin saw reflected the strength she had reclaimed within herself, the courage to face loss, the grace to open her heart again, the wisdom to honor boundaries while embracing connection. The forest around her breathed with life renewed. Tiny buds peeked through melting snow, streams murmured beneath ice-thin sheets, and the sky stretched wide and clear above the trees. The cycles of nature, death and rebirth, departure and return, wove through the landscape like an ancient song. Marin understood that her own healing was part of that eternal rhythm, a quiet unfolding of presence and hope. As she turned away from the window, the cabin felt less like a refuge from the world and more like a home, a place shaped not just by walls and firelight, but by the stories held within. The silent bond she shared with Luna and her cub was woven into the very fabric of this place, a lasting light that would guide her through seasons yet to come. If you've ever had to say goodbye to a friend who changed your life, share your story in the comments below. Remember, presence matters more than action, and sometimes the smallest gestures leave the deepest marks. Outside, the forest held its breath one last time. A soft wind stirred the branches, carrying whispers of trust and transformation far beyond the snow-covered land. Luna's amber eyes lingered on the fading glow of the cabin before she turned fully toward the wild, free, fierce, and forever changed.